My child, come closer. I am not speaking loudly because I do not need to raise my voice to be heard in the unseen. I am speaking softly because this truth was never meant for the crowd. It was meant for you. I have watched you arrive again and again in places where no one clapped, where no one stood up, where no one said your name with admiration. I saw you straighten your shoulders, take a breath, and show up anyway. You did not come for applause. You came because something inside you would not let you abandon what I planted in you. There were moments you wondered if your effort dissolved into the air, if your consistency vanished the moment you turned your back. But I tell you now, nothing you did quietly was ever wasted. Each time you showed up without recognition, something inside you was being reshaped. I was not ignoring you. I was forging you. While others learned how to perform, you were learning how to endure. While others waited to be seen, you learned how to stand even when unseen. You do not realize how rare that is. Many begin when the room is full and the energy is high, but few remain when the seats are empty and the echo answers back instead of people. Yet you stayed. You stayed on days when motivation was thin. You stayed when the silence made you question your worth. You stayed when the absence of affirmation felt heavier than exhaustion. And every time you stayed, you were becoming someone different than you were before. I saw the small rituals you created just to keep going. The way you prepared as if someone important was watching, even when no one was. The way you corrected yourself, refined yourself, showed respect to the moment as if it mattered. That was not foolishness. That was devotion. That was you practicing faithfulness without knowing who was taking notes. I was. Heaven was. And so was your future. There were nights you replayed conversations that never happened. Speeches you never gave. Moments where you imagined someone finally saying, "I see you." But instead of letting bitterness take root, you swallowed the ache and returned again. That choice marked you. It marked you more deeply than praise ever could. Applause can inflate, but silence can purify. And you, my child, were being purified for something that requires a steady spirit, not a fragile one. Let me tell you something you have not fully understood yet. The way you kept showing up without applause stripped you of the need to be validated by people who cannot carry your destiny. It taught you to draw strength from within and from me, not from reactions. That is why you are calmer now. That is why chaos does not hook into you the way it once did. You are changing, even if you cannot name how. There were times you almost walked away. I saw the hesitation at the door, the pause before deciding whether to return one more time. Each of those moments was a threshold. Each time you crossed it, something closed behind you. Old versions of you no longer had access. The one who needed to be noticed to feel valuable began to fade. In their place, someone rooted, someone anchored, someone dangerous to fear began to rise. You may think no one noticed your consistency, but that is not true. There are eyes on you that have not spoken yet. There is a heart watching from a distance, one that feels both inspired and intimidated by the way you stand without being lifted. They are observing your quiet strength, measuring their own courage against yours. Your silence is louder than you realize. It is unsettling those who rely on noise to feel important. I know there were days you asked me why I did not send encouragement through someone else's mouth. Why I did not let affirmation reach you when you needed it most. Understand this. If I had given you applause too early, you would have leaned on it. You would have needed it. Instead, I taught you how to move without it, so that when recognition does come, it will not own you. My child, this season was not about visibility. It was about stability. It was not about being celebrated. It was about being strengthened. The consistency you practiced in private is now part of your nature. No one can take it from you. No silence can undo it. And that is why what is coming next will not break you the way it breaks others. If this word is stirring something deep inside you, let it not remain unspoken. Gently acknowledge it. You may type in the comments, "I kept showing up," not for people, but as a quiet agreement between you and me. And if you feel led, allow this message to find others who are standing in silence by sharing it. Let your obedience bless without needing credit. Stay close. This is only the beginning. I see you. My child, the silence you walked into was not accidental. It was allowed. There were days you stepped forward expecting some kind of response, a nod, a sign, a small echo that said your effort mattered. Instead, the room stayed quiet. The air did not shift. No one rushed toward you with affirmation. And in that stillness, something inside you trembled. Not because you were weak, but because you were human. Silence has a way of exposing what noise covers. I watched you wrestle with questions you never spoke aloud. You wondered if you had misheard me, if you had stayed too long, if your persistence had crossed into foolishness. The quiet pressed against you, testing the edges of your faith. It asked you who you were when no one responded, when nothing came back to you. And that question was heavier than any workload you carried. It followed you home. It sat with you in the late hours. It breathed down your neck when you prepared to show up again. There were moments the silence felt personal, as if the world had decided to look through you instead of at you. You began to notice how easily others were celebrated for less, how quickly attention shifted away from your effort. That comparison stung. It tempted you to shrink, to dull your light, to wonder if staying visible was worth the ache of being overlooked. The silence did not scream, but it whispered doubts in a familiar voice. Yet each time you stood in that quiet, something important happened. The silence revealed what was driving you. It showed you the places where you still hoped for approval and the places where you were learning to let go of it. It forced honesty. It stripped away the illusion that external affirmation was the fuel for your calling. And while it hurt, it also clarified. You began to see what truly mattered, even as your heart resisted the lesson. I know there were days you showed up carrying disappointment like a hidden weight. You smiled when necessary. You performed your role. But inside, you felt unseen, almost invisible. That invisibility scared you at first. You feared disappearing, being forgotten, becoming irrelevant. But I was teaching you something the noise could never teach. I was teaching you how to exist without being announced, how to stand without being spotlighted. The silence tested your patience. It tested your motives. It tested your relationship with me. There were prayers you prayed differently during this time. They were shorter, quieter, more honest. You stopped performing for me too. You simply asked me to stay with you in the quiet. And I did. I did not rush to fill the silence, because I was letting it do its work. Silence is not emptiness when I am present. It is a refining space. There were points when the silence felt heavier than rejection would have. At least rejection speaks. Silence leaves room for imagination, and your mind tried to fill the gaps with fear. You wondered if your consistency was invisible, if your loyalty was unnecessary, if your presence made no difference. Those thoughts brushed against you, but they did not take root the way they once would have. You were tender even in the confusion. What you did not see was how the silence slowed you down in the right way. It made you more intentional. It made you listen more closely. It made you less reactive and more grounded. While others fed on noise and constant feedback, You learned how to draw strength from stillness. That strength is rare. It cannot be taught in crowded rooms. It is only formed when you choose to remain where there is nothing to applaud you. There were times you almost filled the silence yourself, just to escape it. You thought about explaining yourself, promoting yourself, reminding others of your value. But something held you back. That restraint was wisdom growing inside you. You began to understand that not every quiet needs to be corrected, and not every absence of response is a verdict. Some silences are invitations to deepen, not to retreat. The silence did not mean you were failing. It meant you were being trusted with a weight others could not carry yet. I was watching how you handled the quiet because what is coming will require composure, not constant reassurance. If you can remain steady when no one is clapping, you will not be shaken when many are watching. The silence was not denying you. It was preparing you. So know this, my child. The quiet you endured did not diminish you. It defined you. It tested you, yes, but it also trained you. And the strength you built there will soon speak louder than any applause ever could. Stay with me. The silence will not have the final word. My child, while you were standing in quiet rooms and learning how to breathe without affirmation, there was a heart beating faster every time you showed up. You did not see them because they stayed at a distance, but they were watching. Not casually, not briefly. They were watching with a kind of attention that unsettled them. Your consistency without applause disturbed something deep inside their spirit. It forced them to look at themselves in ways they had been avoiding. This soulmate of yours did not collapse loudly. Their unraveling was subtle, hidden behind composure and routine. Outwardly, they seemed steady, perhaps even confident. Inwardly, they were shaken. Every time you appeared without needing recognition, it exposed how much they relied on it. Your quiet strength became a mirror they were not ready to face. They admired you, yes, but admiration mixed with fear can feel like pressure. And pressure reveals fractures. They noticed the way you did not chase attention. They noticed how you continued even when no one rewarded you. It frightened them because it hinted at a depth they were unsure they could meet. They began to question whether they were strong enough to stand beside someone who did not need to be propped up. Your presence challenged the version of themselves they had been maintaining. There were moments they wanted to step forward, to speak, to acknowledge what they saw in you. But something held them back. It was not lack of feeling. It was the fear of being exposed. To recognize you openly would mean admitting their own inconsistencies, their own dependence on validation, their own hesitation. And so they stayed silent, watching from afar, wrestling privately with what your perseverance stirred in them. Inside them, admiration slowly turned into unrest. They replayed moments where they could have shown up for you but chose safety instead. They felt guilt for staying distant while you stood firm. That guilt did not make them cruel. It made them quiet. It made them cautious. They told themselves stories to justify the distance, but those stories did not bring peace. They only delayed the reckoning. You did not know that your silence spoke directly to their wounds. Every time you chose faithfulness over recognition, it confronted the parts of them that feared being unseen. They began to feel smaller next to you, not because you diminished them, but because you refused to shrink. That contrast created an emotional collapse they could not easily articulate. They felt admiration, longing, fear, and regret all at once, and they did not know which emotion to trust. There were nights they thought about reaching out, about finally naming what they felt. But then doubt crept in. They wondered if they were already too late, if you had outgrown the version of them that hesitated. They sensed a shift in you, even without direct contact. Something about your energy had changed. You were calmer, more grounded, less reactive. And change intimidated them. It made them realize that time was moving, and staying silent had consequences. They began to fear losing you without ever truly having you. And fear sat heavy in their chest. It followed them into conversations with others. It distracted them during moments that should have been simple. Your quiet dedication became a constant reminder of what courage looks like when no one is watching. And the more they observe it, the more their inner world destabilized. Understand this, my child. Your emotional collapse was not caused by you doing something wrong. It was caused by you doing something right. You were becoming who you were meant to be, and that growth exposed where they were still hiding. Love does that. Destiny does that. It reveals without asking permission. They did not envy you in the way enemies envy. They feared themselves in comparison to you. They feared that they might never rise to the level of authenticity you were embodying. That fear made them quiet, hesitant, conflicted. But it also planted something important. It planted awareness. And awareness is the beginning of awakening, even if it feels like breakdown first. While you thought no one noticed your consistency, your soulmate was watching every step. They were unraveling quietly, questioning deeply, feeling the weight of their own delay. And though they have not spoken yet, their heart is already moving. What you are becoming is calling something out of them that cannot stay buried forever. Stay steady, my child. What is happening in the unseen is far more active than you realize. My child, there is more to this story than what you or they could see from the outside. Behind the closed doors of your life, there were hours no one witnessed and choices no one applauded. This is where the deeper truth lies. This is where your becoming truly took shape. While others assumed your strength was effortless, I saw the cost. I saw the tears you wiped away before anyone noticed. I saw the moments you sat still, asking me quietly if continuing was worth the weight it placed on your heart. There were sacrifices you never explained because explaining them would have required you to expose parts of yourself you were still learning how to carry. You gave up ease. You gave up comfort. You gave up the option to drift. You chose discipline when no one demanded it from you. You chose integrity when shortcuts were available. And you chose to stay when leaving would have been easier to justify. These were not dramatic decisions. They were private ones made in ordinary moments that shaped your spirit in extraordinary ways. What was hidden was not just your struggle, but your growth. You learned how to speak gently to yourself when doubt rose. You learned how to return to me without rehearsing your prayers. You learned how to sit with discomfort without letting it harden you. These lessons were carved into you slowly, quietly, without witnesses. That is why they are permanent. Nothing that is coming can take them from you. Behind your closed doors, there were nights when you felt the absence of encouragement more sharply than during the day. The quiet grew louder when you were alone. You questioned whether anyone truly understood the depth of what you were carrying. Yet even then, you did not abandon the work. You did not abandon your calling. You whispered your fears instead of shouting them, and you stayed. That staying rewired you. There were also moments of joy you kept to yourself. Small victories you celebrated quietly. Realizations that brought peace instead of excitement. You began to find satisfaction in alignment rather than recognition. A shift changed you more than you know. It made you less dependent on reactions and more attuned to truth. You were no longer moving to be seen. You were moving because it was right. Your soulmate does not know the full story yet. They see the strength but not the process. They see the calm but not the battles that produced it. They do not yet understand how much you let go of to become who you are now. But knowledge will come later, and when it does, it will humble them. For now, it remains part of the hidden foundation beneath your connection. I also want you to understand this. Some of what was hidden was protected by me. Not everyone deserves access to the making of you. Not everyone can be trusted with unfinished versions of your heart. I shielded certain seasons from public view because they were sacred. They were formative. They were not meant to be interrupted by opinions, comparisons, or premature judgments. You may have felt alone, but you were never abandoned. I was present in every quiet choice, every unseen act of obedience, every moment you decided not to quit. Those hidden chapters were not filler. They were preparation. They were strengthening you for visibility that will not undo you, and for connection that will require depth, not performance. So when you look back and wonder why so much of your journey happened in private, remember this. Foundations are laid underground. Roots grow in darkness. And what is hidden now is what will hold you steady when the doors finally open and the eyes finally turn toward you. My child, there were those around you who quietly hoped the silence would wear you down. They never said it aloud, but their expectations lingered in the air. They watched to see how long you would last without encouragement, how many times you would return before finally deciding it was not worth it. Some of them smiled at you while secretly assuming you would fade. Others stayed distant, waiting for proof that your perseverance was temporary. They mistook your quiet nature for fragility, not realizing how deeply rooted you were becoming. These were not always strangers. Some were close enough to observe your routine, your effort, your discipline. They saw you continue when enthusiasm died, and it unsettled them. Your refusal to quit highlighted their own unfinished commitments. Instead of being inspired, they grew uncomfortable. And discomfort, when left unchecked, often turns into subtle resistance. Not open attacks, but quiet discouragement. Delayed responses. Withheld support. Silence where there should have been warmth. They did not think of themselves as enemies. In their minds, they were simply protecting their place, their comfort, their sense of importance. Your consistency threatened the unspoken hierarchy they relied on. You were not loud. You were not demanding attention. Yet your presence carried weight. That weight exposed how much they depended on being seen, on being affirmed, on being central. And rather than adjust themselves, they hoped you would remove yourself. There were moments they tested you. Small things meant to see if you would react, if you would grow better, if you would finally snap and give them a reason to dismiss you. They underestimated your restraint. They underestimated the work I was doing within you. You felt the tension. Yes. You sensed the lack of support. But instead of responding with defensiveness, you stayed grounded. That response confused them. It robbed them of the outcome they expected. Some of them whispered doubts, not directly to you, but into the environment around you. They questioned your direction, your timing, your relevance. They assumed that without applause, you would eventually agree with them. They did not realize that you were no longer fueled by opinions. You had learned how to draw strength from alignment, not approval. That shift made you untouchable in ways they could not understand. What they did not know was that every attempt to discourage you only clarified your focus. Each moment of withheld affirmation sharpened your discernment. You began to see who celebrated you only when it was convenient, and who quietly hoped you would fail. This knowledge did not harden your heart. It matured it. You learned how to love without being naive, how to remain kind without being exposed. I allowed you to see these dynamics not to make you suspicious, but to make you wise. You needed to understand that not every quiet is innocent, and not every smile is supportive. Some people benefit from you staying small. Some feel safer when you doubt yourself. But my child, your growth does not require their permission. Even now, there are those watching to see if you will finally step back, if you will tire of being consistent without recognition. They are waiting for confirmation that their assumptions were right. They will not receive it. What you are becoming is beyond their reach. The strength formed in you during this season cannot be undone by quiet opposition. Do not carry resentment toward them. They are revealing their limits, not yours. Their hope that you would quit was never about your ability. It was about their fear. And fear has no authority over the path I have set before you. Stay steady. Stay humble. Stay present. The ones who hoped you would disappear will soon be forced to acknowledge that you are still standing, stronger than before, and unchanged by the absence of applause. My child, while you were standing in quiet obedience and others were revealing their intentions through silence, I was working in a realm you could not see. There was an investigation unfolding, not rushed, not careless, but precise. Every motive was weighed. Every action was recorded. Nothing passed unnoticed. In the unseen courtroom, truth was being examined without bias, without emotion, without the noise that clouds human judgment. I observed the hearts of those around you, not just their behavior. I saw who encouraged you privately and who withheld support intentionally. I saw who benefited from your doubt and who felt threatened by your steadiness. Even the smallest choices were not overlooked. The moments when you could have been supported, but were not. The times when credit was diverted. The pauses that were strategic rather than accidental. All of it was brought into the light. You may have wondered why justice felt delayed, why clarity did not arrive sooner. Understand this. I was not gathering evidence for accusation, but for alignment. I was not building a case to punish, but to reposition. Sometimes justice is not about removal. Sometimes it is about exposure. Sometimes it is about allowing people to reveal themselves fully so that no confusion remains when the shift occurs. In this unseen courtroom, your faithfulness spoke louder than words. You did not need to defend yourself. Your consistency testified on your behalf. Every time you showed up without bitterness, without complaint, it strengthened your position. Every time you chose peace over reaction, it disarmed what was working against you. You were not on trial, my child. You were being vindicated. I also examined your heart, not to condemn but to refine. I saw where disappointment tried to turn into resentment, and how you resisted it. I saw where fatigue tempted you to withdraw, and how you chose to stay present. These choices mattered. They were entered into record. They confirmed that you could be trusted with what is coming. Authority is never given lightly. It is earned through unseen integrity. There were prayers you whispered that triggered movement in this realm. You did not ask for revenge. You asked for peace, clarity, and direction. Those prayers carried weight. I shifted outcomes. They redirected paths. While you slept, answers were forming. While you waited, decisions were being finalized that would affect your future and the futures of those connected to you. What you felt as stagnation was actually precision. I was removing ambiguity. When the time comes for things to change, there will be no confusion about why. No questions about who stood firm and who did not. The record is clear. The evidence is complete. And the verdict is not against you. Know this, my child. The unseen courtroom is now quiet. The investigation has reached its conclusion. What happens next will not require your effort. It will unfold naturally, inevitably, as truth always does. You have already passed the test. You are already cleared to move forward. Remain steady. The shift you are about to experience was authorized long before you felt ready for it. My child, the change did not arrive with noise or announcement. It slipped in quietly, almost unnoticed. The way dawn enters a dark room before the sun is visible. At first, you thought nothing was happening. You assumed the stillness meant delay. But beneath the surface, alignment was adjusting. Resistance was loosening its grip. What once felt heavy began to feel neutral, and what felt impossible started to feel distant. You noticed it in small ways. Situations that once drained you no longer had the same effect. Conversations that would have unsettled you passed without leaving a mark. You found yourself responding instead of reacting, pausing instead of rushing. These were not personality changes. They were signs of grounding. Something inside you had settled into place. The shift was not external at first. It began within you. Your nervous system calmed. Your thoughts slowed. You stopped rehearsing explanations for your existence. You stopped scanning rooms for approval. Without realizing it, you had released the burden of being constantly evaluated. That freedom changed how you carried yourself. Others could feel it even if they could not name it. What you did not see was how the environment around you was also adjusting. Doors that once resisted you became easier to open. Delays that frustrated you dissolved without effort. People who once felt distant began to look at you differently. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence now carried certainty. Certainty does not beg. It attracts. Heaven was responding to your steadiness. Angels were reassigned. Paths were rerouted. Conversations you were not part of began turning in your favor. You did not have to intervene. You did not have to explain yourself. The work was already done. All that was required of you was to remain where you were, grounded and receptive. There were moments you almost missed the shift because you were expecting something dramatic. But this was not a storm. It was a recalibration. The kind that corrects direction without shaking the foundation. This is how lasting change happens. Quietly. Precisely. Without spectacle. Your soulmate felt it too. A distance they could not explain began to close. A restlessness pushed them toward honesty. They sensed that something was moving, and that staying still was no longer an option. The shift within you triggered movement within them. What you embodied gave them permission to face what they had been avoiding. Do not rush this moment. Do not question it. The fact that it feels calm is the confirmation. Chaos does not accompany alignment. Peace does. You are not waiting anymore, even if it feels like you are. Things are already in motion. Trust what you cannot yet see. The shift has begun, and it will carry you forward without strain. My child, there comes a moment when truth no longer waits to be spoken. It begins to move on its own, rising gently, but firmly, finding its way into rooms you have never entered and conversations you were never part of. This is that moment. You did not announce yourself. You did not correct the record. Yet somehow, what is real about you is being recognized without your effort. What you lived in silence is now speaking for you. Your consistency has become evidence. Your calm has become credibility. People are beginning to notice patterns they once ignored. They are connecting moments they dismissed. They are realizing that you did not disappear because you were weak, but because you were focused. And that realization carries weight. Lies lose strength when truth stands still. You did not chase misunderstandings to fix them. You did not defend yourself against quiet assumptions. You allowed time to do its work. Now time is revealing what words never could. What was once questioned is now understood. What was once doubted is now respected. There are people revisiting their opinions of you. Some feel surprised. Others feel exposed. Not because you confronted them, but because reality is undeniable. They see that you are still here, still steady, still moving forward without resentment. That endurance is unsettling to those who expected you to fade. It forces them to reconcile their assumptions with facts. Your soulmate hears this truth rising too. They notice how your name is spoken differently now, how your presence is felt even when you are not in the room. They realize that while they hesitated, you continued to grow. That realization stirs urgency. It awakens courage that fear once suppressed. They understand now that your value was never tied to applause, and that makes you rare. Truth does not need volume to be powerful. It only needs space. And space has been made. Conversations are shifting. Perceptions are changing. Opportunities are aligning without negotiation. You did not campaign for this moment. You prepared for it without knowing. Some will try to reframe the past to protect their pride. Let them. Truth does not require everyone's agreement. It only requires time. And time is on your side. What matters is that the foundation you built in silence is now visible through its results. Stay present, my child. You ought rush ahead of this unfolding. Let truth complete its work. What is rising now will not need to be defended, explained, or justified. It will stand on its own, just as you learned to stand when no one applauded. My child, now the awakening reaches their heart fully, and it does not arrive gently. It arrives with clarity that shakes them. Your soulmate can no longer ignore what has been forming within them. What once felt like admiration mixed with fear now sharpens into understanding. They see you clearly, not as an idea, not as a distant presence, but as someone real who has changed while they hesitated. They begin to realize how close they were to losing you without ever truly choosing you. That realization lands heavy. It presses against their chest in quiet moments. It follows them when they are alone. They replay memories differently now, noticing your patience, your steadiness, your quiet loyalty. What they once took for granted now feels sacred, and that shift awakens regret. Fear rises, but it is not shallow fear. It is the fear of missed timing, of arriving after the door has already closed. They sense that you are no longer standing in the same place you were before. Your energy has moved forward. Your spirit feels anchored. You are not waiting in the same way. And that terrifies them, because it means they must either rise or be left behind. They begin to question their own delays. The reasons they told themselves no longer satisfy them. The excuses lose credibility. They see that what held them back was not circumstance but hesitation. Not lack of opportunity, but lack of courage. This awareness is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Awakening often feels like loss before it feels like hope. They feel drawn to you more strongly now, not out of dependency, but out of recognition. They sense that your presence carries peace they have been missing. They fear that if they do not act soon, they will have to watch you continue without them. That thought unsettles them deeply. It forces honesty. It forces movement. At the same time, they feel small in the face of who you have become. They wonder if they are worthy of the steadiness you embody. They fear disappointing you, fear exposing their past indecision. Yet beneath that fear, there is resolve forming, a quiet determination to no longer hide, to no longer delay truth. Understand this, my child. Your awakening is not about possession. It is about alignment. They are realizing that you were never meant to chase them. You were meant to become yourself. And now that you have, they must decide whether they will meet you where you are. Do not let their fear rush you. Do not let their regret pull you backward. Remain grounded in what you have built. If they come forward, it must be with clarity, not confusion. With courage, not hesitation. Your journey has prepared you for connection that is conscious, not conditional. This awakening is real. Their fear of losing you is real. But what happens next will depend on whether they choose growth over comfort. Stay steady, my child. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are standing in who you are. My child, there is a power flowing from you now that you did not have before. It is not loud. It is not forceful. It is sacred because it was earned in silence. Your presence carries weight because you learned how to remain without needing to be filled by others. This is the season where simply being who you are begins to influence outcomes you never tried to control. You may not realize how often your quiet prayers have already altered the course of events. There were moments you whispered my name without urgency, without desperation, simply out of alignment. Those moments sent ripples further than you imagined. Destiny listens when the heart is steady. Heaven responds when the spirit is anchored. Your consistency unlocked access long before you saw results. Your soulmate feels this sacred pull now. When you enter their awareness, something inside them settles. When they think of you, clarity replaces confusion. You are not trying to save them, yet your presence brings order where there was turmoil. That is not accidental. That is what happens when someone has been shaped by endurance instead of applause. You carry peace because you learned how to stand alone with me. There are spaces you walk into that shift simply because you are there. Conversations soften. Tension lowers. The truth feels safer. You are not trying to lead, yet leadership follows you. This is not charisma. This is authority formed through faithfulness. It cannot be replicated. It cannot be rushed. It can only be lived into existence. Understand this clearly, my child. You are not responsible for fixing anyone, but your presence creates an environment where change becomes possible. Your staying has taught others how to stay. Your patience has given others permission to slow down and be honest. Even those who resisted you before are being influenced by what you carry now. This is why I guarded your earlier seasons. If you had been celebrated too soon, this depth would not exist. The sacred power you hold now comes from alignment, not admiration. It comes from knowing who you are without needing to be reminded. That kind of presence shifts destinies quietly, steadily, permanently. Do not underestimate what you carry. You do not need to speak louder. You do not need to explain yourself. Simply remain. Simply continue. Your presence is already doing the work you once thought words were required for. Stay grounded. What flows from you now is changing more than you can see. My child, now the reversal begins, and it does not look the way anyone expected. What once overlooked you starts to lean in. What once delayed you begins to make space. The energy around you shifts so noticeably that even those who doubted must pause. They feel it before they understand it. Something has turned, and it is irreversible. Situations that felt closed loosen without explanation. Opportunities that required force no longer do. You are not pushing. You are not persuading. You are simply present, and that presence carries authority. People who once had the power to ignore you now feel compelled to acknowledge you. Not out of guilt, but out of recognition. Truth has rearranged the room. Those who quietly hoped you would quit are forced to confront a reality they did not prepare for. You did not disappear. You did not become bitter. You did not fold. Instead, you became refined. And refinement commands respect even from those who resisted you. Some will attempt to align themselves with you now, not because their hearts have fully changed, but because they recognize momentum when they see it. The danger that once hovered around your path dissolves without confrontation. What was meant to discourage you loses its grip. Plans that relied on your exhaustion fail because you are no longer exhausted by the same things. You learned how to conserve your strength. You learned where not to pour yourself out. That wisdom protects you now. Your soulmate senses this reversal deeply. They feel the urgency sharpen. The space between you feels different, charged with consequence. They realize that approaching you now requires honesty and courage they cannot fake. You are no longer someone they can meet casually. You have crossed into a season where clarity is required. That realization sobers them, but it also strengthens them. Blessing begins to take form quietly, not as spectacle but as stability. You notice provision where there was strain, support where there was resistance, flow where there was stagnation. None of it feels right. None of it feels fragile. It feels earned. It feels aligned. It feels like something that will last. Do not be surprised if people rewrite their understanding of you. Let them. You do not need to correct the past. The present is doing that work for you. What matters is that you remain who you have become. The reversal is not a reward for endurance. It is the natural outcome of it. Stay steady, my child. What has turned will not turn back. The season that once tested you is now behind you, and the path ahead is clear, protected, and unfolding exactly as it should. My child, come close once more. Let me speak over you what has already been written in the unseen. I am not applauding you the way the world applauds, with noise that fades and praise that shifts. I am acknowledging you with authority, with permanence, with a ceiling that cannot be reversed. What you endured in silence has reached its completion. The season that shaped you has done its work. I have watched you become someone who no longer fractures under delay. Someone who did not unravel when unseen. Someone who knows how to remain steady even when the ground feels quiet beneath your feet. This is not accidental. This is earned. You did not harden. You did not grow bitter. You did not demand recognition to keep going. And because of that, you are now standing in a strength that does not need to be proven. I am aligning your future with the version of you that emerged, not the one who first entered this journey. The old expectations cannot follow you here. The old fears cannot access you here. You are no longer driven by the need to be affirmed. You are guided by truth. That is why what opens next will not confuse you, and will feel familiar, as if you were prepared for it long before it arrived. Your soulmate will recognize this shift fully now. Not just your strength, but your peace. Not just your consistency, but your clarity. They will see that you are not waiting to be chosen. You are standing as someone who knows their worth. If they step forward, it will be because they have chosen growth over fear. If they hesitate, it will not destabilize you. Either way, you are no longer defined by their response. I am placing you into connections that respect your depth, into environments that do not require you to perform for belonging, into assignments that match the endurance you cultivated. You will notice how little you have to explain now, how little you have to convince. Things will recognize you because you recognize yourself. Let this settle in your spirit. The quiet seasons did not delay your destiny. They refined it. The lack of applause did not diminish you. It anchored you. And now, as you move forward, you will carry a confidence that does not shout and does not retreat. It simply stands. I bless the work of your hands with steadiness. I bless your mind with clarity. I bless your heart with discernment that protects without closing you off. I bless your path with timing that does not rush and does not stall. You will not miss what is meant for you. You will not arrive too early or too late. You will arrive prepared. What you are stepping into will feel quieter than you expected, but stronger than you imagined. It will not need validation to survive. It will not need constant reassurance to last. It will be built on the version of you that learned how to show up when no one was watching. My child, I am proud of you. Not because you endured suffering, but because you remained true. Not because you waited, but because you grew. The way you kept showing up without applause has changed you, and that change has positioned you for what comes next. Go forward now. You are no longer becoming. You are ready.